Everybody needs to just take a breath and relax. It's going to be a crazy process overall. And the reason I'm only going to spend 45 minutes now isn't because I'm going to hit everything that you need to know. In fact, you're probably going to leave here with more questions than you came in here with. But that's somewhat what this is for, all right? All that I'm going to try to do here in 45 minutes is present to you the different options and the different paths that you can take if you want to keep swimming and if you want to keep doing these things as swimmers. Then there's a lot of options out there to keep swimming, some of which are team and oriented that way. Others are club swimming at the college level and participating with people who just love to swim and love to train and love to do that thing, and go from there. And they actually have, depending on schools, they actually go to the club competitions as well. But the idea here is just to see that there are a lot of options, that there are a lot of things to go through. And then from that, understanding that there's going to be a lot of things that come up individually. There's no way that I could sit here and address everybody's individual path on this swimming in college, whether it's our top national group swimmer or somebody that's coming up through one of our growth or even foundation groups and just want to swim in college and continue their swimming. There's options there, and there's steps to take, but it's all going to be individual based on you, and it's going to take some time just to figure things out, okay? What I hope to do here is just give you a picture of kind of where that roadmap starts, the steps that the swimmers have to take, how to start looking at colleges, where to start looking at things to see what level that you can start looking at and kind of see where you are with that. So with that, there's a lot of information out there, but it'll all work out. Everybody freaks out because it is a big decision, but all of these swimmers on this team are committed to a lot. So their commitment to this process has started long before. Yes, there's going to be other things of calling coaches or emailing schools and doing these things that they have to get on top of eventually. But the work that they're putting in swimming will help them get into school in one way or another. Not necessarily guarantee their best school or their top choice by any means, but it'll help in one way or the other for sure. Utilize your coach to help in the process. And whether it's your coach of your group or now it's set up to sophomores, juniors, and seniors. I used to say junior mentoring because that seemed to be the biggest year. Now, and we'll talk a little bit about it, but if they're not going through and starting a good part of this process sophomore year and starting to look at that, then depending on where they are, and I'll go through it in terms of recruiting or getting onto teams or getting spots onto teams, the recruiting process has started earlier. So in terms of myself working with some of them or mentoring in terms of this process, I will start with sophomores as well this year, and it's really just meeting with them. It's helping them figure out those next steps. If they have issues along the way, they can talk to me. Same as with their coach. I also just spent 2 years in the college coaching ranks with that, so it gave me that background of the recruiting process and that process to apply to schools quite a bit. Parents, my suggestion to you is to be very involved in this. It's a big decision, and we know that the swimmers aren't always 100% on top of things, as good as they are. But I think the swimmer needs to take the lead. We're talking about them going to college. We're talking about them taking that next step and really taking that next step in their adulthood. And I think this is a good first step in order to do that. And I will tell you, the college coaches will really appreciate being able to work with the student athlete earlier in this process versus expecting to work with a parent all the way and then transfer it over and work with the athlete by the time they're already at school. They already have that relationship. If they've already worked with the athlete, they don't expect them to be perfect. They know that they're teenagers and still learning how to interact and deal with an adult that sometimes holds the keys to their future in terms of getting into school or going there. But they understand those things, and the swimmers, as part of this whole process, need to kind of get comfortable with that and get comfortable talking to other coaches and reaching out and having those conversations. And in fact, a lot of you in the room will have to get comfortable saying no to some schools. You're not only going to be approached to the schools that you are interested in and want to go to, but you're going to be approached by other schools as well, a number of you. And you're going to have to, or you should respond, but let them know that thank you very much, but I've kind of narrowed down to my group. But all of this is kind of growing for the swimmer, and I think it's an important process that way. So as we go through, and I will run through this, but I'll email this presentation out. Again, the presentation itself is relatively general, but freshman and sophomore years, this is now a big piece. We have to start moving a little bit more, not as much just to go to school, but if you're going to try to be recruited by any means or start to have conversations with coaches and be involved of them setting up their rosters for the next years, then this process starts here. Because now by the time of their junior year, they have started recruiting trips and they've started actually, well, they haven't quite signed people. They can't sign until their senior year, but they've started getting commitments and they've started notching places on their roster off based on that, and that's starting junior year. So now freshman and sophomore are communication. If you haven't done it yet, that's fine, but it's where this communication needs to start. Some of those things is how do I narrow down the list? And by narrow down, I by no means mean down to like 5 schools. I mean, how do I get it from the hundreds, thousands of schools that are out there down to a manageable amount of 20 schools maybe during our freshman and sophomore years? And it doesn't mean you can't add or take away, but you start to have a manageable list that you can go through and start to communicate. But how you narrow that down is start to understand about yourself, okay? Your family's gonna make decisions on what's important and what's not important and how it fits into your overall decision. But some of those things that seem small at the time mean something when you're there for 4 years and you're going through it. School size. School size doesn't mean a huge bit in terms of your education, but it means a lot to people in terms of their experience a lot of times. Are you open to all types of weather? Again, that one seems a small one to worry about if you have a school that you want to go to. But if you're like me and you don't like cold places, 4 years in a very cold place as a swimmer is going to be a long time. So I looked all West Coast and during the South. That's basically where I looked at schools. A lot of good schools anywhere you want to go, and if there's a limitation or if there's something that you truly just kind of get depressed when it's cold and cloudy and dark outside all the time, then maybe you should look at a different school that has a little bit different weather. I believe that to be something that you can look at. Again, that comes down to families to decide exactly where those things fall, but I think those are some of the things that can be looked at. Do they have an idea of what you want to major in? Not that you have to decide at this point, but if you have those ideas and what the school may offer, that may do it. Academic levels. The highest academic school is not necessarily the best one for you to go to. I know that name and title and those things are there, but if you're going to go there and struggle in school and struggle in swimming and everything's just going to be a struggle, the name of the school you went to doesn't matter really much anymore, right? If you're not going to be able to be there and really be successful in what you're doing and learn in the classes, not just get a grade and a degree to move on, but actually learn and be advantageous to you personally, I would say that pick an academic level that's going to let you do that and still grow and still develop as a person and still learn a lot, but in an environment that fits you better. To me, that's okay to make that decision. But again, these are just some of the things that you can look at and make decisions on how you want to narrow down schools. Swimming-wise, I'll offer another whole different range of things. Research times on the different teams, all right? Not just whether you fit in now as a freshman or sophomore or even junior, but where are the times? Do you understand how fast the schools are that you're looking at and what it will take for you to get there? Sometimes you'll look and go, wow, I'm actually kind of there already. I would have thought they were much faster. Some of the schools that are actually pretty good academic schools are going to be like that. I will share with the girls, the Ivy League schools for girls is kind of a gold mine for swimmers. Okay? It's not easy by any means, but the Ivy League schools for girls, for the women, are not the most competitive teams to get into. So now as a swimmer, as a really NCSA's junior level or above, you start to have access to talk to those coaches and start to try to get into those schools. On the guys' side, there's less guys' teams overall, so those teams have tended to be a little bit more competitive because they were a bigger option for some of the faster guys to go to. But again, it's just because there's less men's teams overall, right? But those are some of the things to look at. Goes back to academic levels. If that's really what you're looking at, then look at some of those. Don't just dismiss a team. I don't want to pick one. Dartmouth we've sent. 2 people already, both NCSAs, maybe just winter junior level at the time, so good swimmers, but both recruited athletes, both going through the whole process of not just getting into school there, but actually being recruited and asked to come and be a part of their team. And again, that's the NCSA or winter junior level. So that all is going to vary, but that's going to take time to look at those teams. Don't just assume, oh, wow, that's a really good school, so it's probably a really fast team. Take a look, see where they are. Where would you like to fall into schools? That's going to be a little bit different as well. Do you want to go in a school that you're comfortable, that you go into a team that you're already kind of in the mid-level or even towards the top, that you go in and you're going to get a great experience and you're going to be able to swim, but it's not going to be a chase just to catch up or keep up with the group and just be kind of chasing the group or the team to reach that next level, but you want to go into the level. That's okay. Where you go on the swimming is going to be up to you, but you kind of want to see where you want to fall. Do you want to go into that reach school? Do you want to go into that environment that you think will help you reach that next level of your swimming? Then that's great. Pick that and go for it. If you don't, if you really want to continue your swimming, enjoy the team experience, get everything out of that college and swimming environment, but do so without so much pressure or stress of the swimming part of it on you, then go to a school that you're kind of more at the top level and they're just going to be excited having you there, and you're going to have to commit still. It's still going to be hard work and everything like that, but you're not putting yourself kind of out on a limb just to try to survive on the team or not. Does that make sense? So you start to look, when you look at these times, you start to look, where do you want to fall? And not where you fall now, but as you progress and as your progression is gone, where do you want to fall? What meet would you like to be focused on? And when I talk about this, I talk a little bit about levels within the college. This presentation doesn't have much on that. Levels within college swimming. And your levels within college swimming vary, like I said, from club swimming, where you go to a school and they just have a group of people that get together and they hire a coach and they just work out. Sometimes those clubs then go to the club swimming championships for college, and they, on their own, just kind of rally together and fly over together and compete. Then you can go up to NAIA, which is like the NC2A, but just in a little bit smaller schools. And then you go to NC2As, and there's Division III, Division II, Division I, all within just the college ranks. And then you can go to junior college and community colleges and things like that. A lot of different options to keep swimming and to keep that going. What I mean by this is a lot of times athletes want to pick Division I just because it's Division I. Again, it goes by that name type of, I want to be a Division I athlete. It's great. You can have that title. A lot of times that means, unless you are the top of the top, NC2A's Division I is very, very fast to make it to, probably the fastest meet in the world. If you pick a Division I and you're not kind of up towards that already, then chances are you're looking at setting your focus on conference most of the time. Doesn't mean the goal isn't NC2As or nationals, but you're accepting that probably the first year, maybe the second, maybe even the third, conference is going to be your biggest meet, which is great, right? Or you can start to look at, what does it take to make Division II NC2As and nationals and actually go to NC2As, or Division III and schools like Johns Hopkins or things like that, awesome schools that are in Division III, and it's not nearly as fast. It's still fast, but it's not nearly as fast to make NC2As and get that experience of going to that national championship meet and doing those things. 2 fully different experiences. Division I, but not quite fast enough to make NC2As, so you swim with a team and you go to their conference meet and you do all those things. Or you go to Division III and same swimmer, but now you're fast enough and you go to NC2As, probably make finals, depending, again, levels, but very easily be able to make finals and still be just a conference level swimmer, if I'm making sense there. So there's different things for you to look at. A lot of these things, or actually all of these things, I believe, swimming-wise, is going to be up to the swimmer. They need to make the decision on what they're looking at. In terms of the school, I think the swimmer is really important, but that's where the parents are going to get a little bit more involved on what's important or why to make decisions for you guys. But again, I just want to kind of throw this out of how you start to narrow down that list. Otherwise, you can start to look at things and see the good things in every college. All these colleges out there have amazing things, and they're amazing schools. So if you're going to look for only the positive things that could be a fit, you're going to find a lot of schools for you to go through. right? You want to start narrowing that down that have a few things, that have that list of things. If you already have one or two, then I encourage you to expand that list a little bit more. Don't get so focused on one or two schools. That becomes a little bit harder. A school like Stanford as a swimmer is very difficult to get into on either side, especially on the women's side right now, almost no matter how fast you are. Freshman and sophomore years continued here, and I put this in red, bold, now is the time. And not in a way that I want to freak out our freshmen and sophomores, or our juniors for that matter, but in a way that I think we need to change our mentality a little bit. 4 years, forever, really. It's always that, oh my gosh, it's junior year, I have to work really hard, and I have to get good grades, and I have to do these things because the all-important junior year. It's the biggest mistake that you can make in terms of this process. That's when everybody gets stressed. That's when everybody gets sick. It's when you are more susceptible to injuries and things like that because you are now putting all this pressure on a single year. If you haven't done it here, you can try and play catch up your junior year, but it's a little bit late, right? If you want to do this, if you want to set your goals in terms of college swimming and do these things, then you're here, and that's a perfect first step. And then you have to figure out what it's going to take to get there. And that means now. What are you going to change in your process? What are you going to change to be coachable by your coaches to help you start to make that process? This is especially what I mean by the now is the time. Right? Can't be junior year. We can't put it off. College is not just important by your junior year, getting ready for your senior year. Now even more with recruiting trips. But we need to make sure that if this is your goal, long-term goal is to swim in college and have that environment or have that experience and do those things, now's the time to be planning for it, right? There's a lot of freshmen I see in here, so it's perfect. But wherever you are, now's the time. Start communicating with colleges. Fill out their questionnaires. If you go on their website, every college somewhere on there will have a questionnaire for you to fill out. Fill it out, send it in. 75% of the time, very rough guess there, you're not going to hear back anything. Okay? So just understand that right from the start. Most of the time you're not going to hear anything, but they have it. And then when you email them later and you do those things later, you're already in their system. So they know that you were interested, they got an email too, and then when they start to look things up, then they have all the information. This first one won't be about starting a conversation necessarily. Some will start that conversation and go. Other ones, you're just trying to get the information to them first. That make sense? It's a little warm in here, sorry. Send a letter, email, and athletic resume. One of the things I'm excited about this year is this structure now gives me an assistant coach, and she's aware, so it's not a secret. But I get a lot more projects done this way. One of these things that I want to set up is our college kind of website page a little bit more, and we'll have different things, it comes up later, but we'll have examples of resumes, and we'll have examples of emails and letters and things like that. And we'll have even an example of a spreadsheet that has different information pieces that you can go and change it. But we'll put some of these example things up on a website that you can do that as we go through the next probably month or so. But these, again, is you want to make it as easy as possible for these colleges to communicate with you and know who you are as a person and to remember you, right? So when you do your resume, when you do these letters and emails, when you do the questionnaires, all of this is to make sure that they have the information over and over and over again. So when they do, and you send that email and you go, I remember that name, and they search their emails and it pops up with 3 emails and they can look at your resume and see everything about you and know how conscientious you were and proactive you were in this process. That's what this communication is about. Does that make sense? Understand also that the recruiting coordinators, 99.9% of the time, are the assistant coaches. Don't get turned off by the assistant coach talking to you and not the head coach on things like that. Also in that regard, a little bit earlier, but as you go through it, don't assume a lack of response to be a lack of interest. That make sense? Never assume a lack of response to be a lack of interest. Yes, sometimes it is, but what I explain it, or how I explain it best is None of you want the college coach to be more focused on you right now than they are on the 4 years of people they have in college already, right? If they're more focused on recruiting, they'll be really good at answering your emails all the time. They'll be really good at talking to you anytime that you want to talk to you. But that means they're taking time for you away from their team that are there 4 years. You don't want the best recruiter ever. You want the coach that's committed to the team and is willing to recruit and help and go through that process because it's part of their job. But you want the coach that's committed to the 4 years of people they have in the water versus just the recruiting aspect of it. That make sense? So don't take it as an insult or anything like that if they don't respond to you right away. That's not necessarily the case. If they aren't interested, they will let you know. We don't have any spots right now. If you get faster, they'll let us know. It's basically what they'll say. Maybe not quite those words and directly, but that's essentially what they'll say, right? College coaches can send questionnaires and general team info, but that is it. Freshman and sophomore years. That stayed the same. In fact, it got tighter that way. They can't communicate much at all freshman and sophomore years, but now starting, I forget if it's July 1st or August 1st of junior year, but going into the junior year is when they can start communicating email and phone call wise. Eligibility centers, again, go ahead and start it early. You're going to have to add things as you go, but the eligibility at the center is for NC2A. That means you've gone through, and that's where you get your the general grade stuff done and the things like that. So what this is doing is making sure that you are eligible to be a student athlete at the NC2A level, is what that is. Most of you guys, hopefully, as student athletes here, that should not be an issue to be eligible, but it's a process that you have to go through. And you'll need to have this done before you're allowed to go on any recruit trips. Freshman, sophomore, you don't need it, but it's easier just to get it done than an upgrade with tests. And in fact, once you're in there, I believe SATs and test scores can be updated automatically once you're already set up in there. Okay? Same idea here, play in NAIA. NAIA was that other division. Again, it's a little bit smaller schools, but the same idea. It's where you're getting cleared to be participating in the NAIA schools athletically. And then this process just continues to go through those 2 years of every time you have a big meet or something goes on, update them. Let them know the time drops and all of those things. Before I go into these two things, any questions on those first couple years? Again, I said you'd probably have more questions than answers after this, but everybody's kind of on the same page right now? Okay. Junior and senior year. Now I've just combined them because it's basically the same. You're not behind if you're starting junior year, but there are a lot of schools, especially kind of, it starts from the upper side and comes down. So a school like Stanford will start just checking off their list as early as people want to commit. And a school like Stanford is getting a lot of commits early, right? And then it just moves down, and those coaches, it's appearing to me, coaches these days are more willing to just kind of check off the box and get who they perceive to be good recruits done and committed. And when I say that, junior year can only commit, senior year is when you sign. And I'll explain the two signing dates in a second. So juniors can go on recruit trips, they can talk to the coaches all the time, and they can verbally commit. The scary thing about that is it's not really binding to anybody. A school can turn around and use the excuse, and this has been known to have happened, of, oh, I'm sorry, we thought we could get you in the school, but we couldn't get you in the school. There's nothing I can do about it. I guess you can't come in. After they've committed, stopped their recruiting process, and moved on it, there's schools that do that. Again, I don't mean to use that as freaking out, but the junior year is still kind of a question. So you need, to me, this makes it even more important to make sure that you're communicating with your coaches so we can navigate that a little bit with you, especially in terms of those conversations with coaches. The biggest issues I've run into as a coach in helping athletes is when they're not talking to me until they tell me that they told me it was all set up and they told me I had a place, and now they said no, and it's May and they're supposed to go to school in 2 months. So far, I've been actually able to help those people quite a bit. It's much easier if this communication starts earlier. And it's not just that coaches are going to do that all the time. That's not what I mean by that, the junior year. Because if coaches are rescinding those offers too much, even if they say it's school eligibility or whatever, that's going to get around the recruiting world and that's going to impact their recruiting. So none of these guys are going to do it on purpose, but it's seeming that they're willing to take those risks with a junior, really, so the times are from sophomore year, guessing who's going to be fast in college 3 to 7 years from then. But it's where they are, and it's what they're doing is trying to sign those potential good people earlier. All right. So I only say that to say that our process at least has to start and be involved in there as well. At the start of the year, college coaches can start communicating. Recruit trips are now available as well junior year. An athlete being recruited is different than a normal student. So here's another piece of kind of the advantage of swimming, not just the lessons to learn and the time management and all of those things. The other piece of it is the coach has a few different options to help. The first is a scholarship. It's money-wise and obvious, pretty easy. That's the top end of what will help. The other side of that then, every school will have some sort of kind of stamp that they can give some number of athletes. That's going to be variable based on probably the coach's tenure, probably the school's academic level. The size of the school is going to be a little bit as well. And then some different things will vary in that. But normally when you go to talk to the coaches, you'll be able to ask, how many spots do you have for people? And what you mean by that is not how many spots can you allow to get on the team, but how many spots of recruitable athletes do you have that you can help through the admissions process. So how that works is most of the schools, if you're on a recruit trip and going through that process, they're going to ask for your transcripts. They're going to send it to a subcommittee within the admissions department that has athletic department people and normal admissions people. And they go through and they look through the list. And normally the subcommittee within the athletic department knows who the coach wants, knows all those stamps of list people, and they go through, and when that name comes up and goes, yeah, Coach so-and-so really wants this person, and they'll look at it and go, all right, stamp and be good. The coaches that have been around for a while are going to understand that process pretty easy. So when they say, yeah, the subcommittee or the admissions department shouldn't be an issue, then they can stamp it and you're good. Okay? So no matter what the school is or where you are, that's one of the biggest advantages that swimming gives over scholarships. That affects many more people than actually getting money. Right? Ivy Leagues don't offer money at all, just for reference. So that's the big piece of that is getting around from just being the normal student, you becoming a swimmer and you getting kind of that stamp and willingness of the coach to help you get into the school is where that biggest advantage falls. Each person can take up to 5 recruiting visits. The nice part about having 2 years to do it is it spreads it out a little bit. What was happening before is when I was at school, you could take them in the fall or the spring, and technically you still can. But now the spring's gone, and everybody tried to do this fall. And now with the junior year opening, it's bumping it even earlier. So you have 5 recruiting trips. Normally we try to space them out and not just try to hit 5 in a row. As the athletes go, one should be aware that they're going into a college environment. So drinking and things like that are normally around. The coaches have tried to be very careful on junior year, but again, it's a college environment. All right? This is something else I don't like sharing my personal opinion a little bit. But I don't like about this is I've had seniors go to recruiting trips at 16 years old. 16 years old and going on a recruit trip as a senior. That means if they would have gone as a junior, they would have been 15. I'm not all that comfortable. It's not my final choice to do it. But that's a big difference to send a 15-year-old into a college environment and expect those college students to treat them that way. So far, I think it's been, they kind of go the far extreme and treat them almost the opposite, like it's an age group team going there. But some of those things are going to be, parents-wise and swimmers, things that you need to be aware of in terms of going in environments that you need to be prepared for. But on the other side, it's also about how tired you get. The travel, the meeting new people constantly, the being on the go constantly, the seeing and walking around the campus through it. When you go on these recruit trips and come back, Most of that's going to take the entire weekend, and you're going to come back and have to go right back into school and start. And then if you have, I had some people schedule five in a row at first, but if you have multiple in a row, those are times that you're going to have to understand that and be aware of your energy levels. Right? It does no good to drill yourself into the ground at that point as you're going through this process. Does that make sense? Continue researching and narrowing down schools as you go through and as you're talking to them. That's why you go on recruit trips. It's why you can go on unofficial visits. Unofficial visits just mean you paid to be there and they're not covering anything. At this point in time, again, they can only happen on junior and senior years. You used to be able to take unofficial and talk to the coaches any year. Now they're really not supposed to talk to you freshman and sophomore year at all, even if you come to the campus on your own. They can say hi, but they'd really have to say, I'm really not supposed to talk to you, but I look forward to talk to you in the future. If you get that, that's why. That's actually the rule. But those trips and seeing the schools and having conversations and doing research online, this is all where we're trying to narrow down and kind of get those schools down of what you want as well. The list of schools that you are building should be within range and that are interested, meaning like those reach schools that you want to continue to work for, even as a junior. You have that entire year still. Just because recruiting started, just because those things are going, doesn't mean you don't have that year, right? Things that are possible that happen is if a coach has 5 spots and gives it all to juniors during their junior year, and you're a junior as well, but you speed up the senior year. Our son would be a prime example of this. This structure as it is right now isn't helping those people very much. And again, that's why I go back to that freshman and sophomore, the time is now. This structure doesn't help a late bloomer. We can help, and I can help again, and that goes back to making sure that you help us. I know a lot of the coaches, and if I don't know them personally, I don't know the right way to put it, the coaches are aware of who I am as well, so we just have a good working relationship, is what I mean by that. But I need to be communicated with on that. So if we do have a late bloomer or somebody who's taken off and going through that, that's awesome, but we need to make sure that we are telling that story, because most of them are already looking at the people who were there before. You're in a much better position and you're set up to help them much better in college. But they've also, like I said before, taken the process of wanting to be done with recruiting and then again go back to focusing on their team. Does that make sense? So I still think junior year, by senior year, you need to have a list of schools that you're looking at and committing to. Junior year, you can still have that interested, that range, that reach type. Schools that you want to really work for and see if by the end of your junior year you can be there, and then jump in the recruiting process your senior year and hope they still have some spots. But the last piece of that is they don't have any spots truly and they can't help at all, then it's on you to get in the school, but it doesn't mean you can't be on the team. They can also still guarantee you a spot on the team. Technically it's called a walk-on at that point. But they can still give you and guarantee a spot on the team through that process as well. That would just have lost, in that case, kind of that rubber stamp to get into school, right? So do you see how a lot of this can be very individual based on your timeline and your structure? To go through. And then from that, understanding that there's going to be a lot of things that come up individually. There's no way that I could sit here and address everybody's individual path on this swimming in college, whether it's our top national group swimmer or talking to coaches on the phone. This is another growth opportunity for all of the swimmers. Some of you, I'm sure, are plenty good at it. But if you were like me and didn't like to talk on the phone, this is something that you had to learn and get comfortable with. Be yourself. It's only a conversation. So swimmers, when you call a coach, whether it's the head coach or assistant coach or whatever, they just want to get to know you. Be yourself. Share what you know about being a part of a team and everything that you know about being a team here. Share those things and what's important to you. Those are the types of things that coaches want to hear. Be prepared with some standard questions that you'd like to know about the school or team. This is another thing that we'll put in kind of our college environment, but it's what's the team culture like? if that's a general question, but let them answer that. Right? See what the coach is going to respond to that and how he does it. I wouldn't focus too much on the training piece of things in terms of how they train. You can ask how they think you'd train, right? But don't focus too much on their training philosophy. If you're really against distance swimming, you can ask it. That's fine. But what I explain to my group especially, but everybody should understand, philosophies are just different. They're different approaches to try to get the results. The distance and yardage-based philosophy has gotten a lot of results in the past, and that's where a lot of your college coaches has come from. So a number of the schools still swim a lot more yardage than we do. The advantage that you have and what you know better than a lot of the athletes that'll go out, though, is how to work hard. So you can go into any environment that you want to and that you decide that you're going to push through, and you can swim fast, okay? And you can train hard and you can handle anything, right? But it shouldn't be just based on that. That's not, I think, a reason to pick a school. If a school, you know that this one coach is just way out there, really the old school, like I train 10,000 workout type, and that's just too much, it would drive you out of the sport, then okay, then it's the wrong team for you, right? But some of those things you learned before. Don't focus too much on those things, but find questions that you want to know the environment and what your experience will be like as a student athlete on the team and those types of things. We'll get some general questions up on the website soon, but you want to be prepared for those so you don't have to think. If you're calling the phone and you had it in your mind, I guarantee you'll forget most of those questions as you start to talk to them, right? Different questions at different times. Initially learning about the team, coaching philosophy and those things. Again, coaching philosophy I mean by how he runs the team, he or she, he unfortunately most of the time, how they run the team, what's important to them, those types of things, over just the training, do they go far or not. Later on, and actually even initially, some of these are also being willing to ask the questions. They know that people are going to be interested if you're at a certain level in scholarships. So ask the question. Be willing to ask the question. They know people are going to be interested in recruit trips. So if they aren't bringing it up right away, then you bring it up. Say, I'd really be interested in a recruit trip. Would that be possible? And they'd either come back and say, yeah, we have these dates. What do you think would happen? Or it's like, well, we don't really have any spots right now. But again, they'll go back into, if you get faster, maybe we can figure something out and open another spot. Okay? But they'll let you know. You shouldn't be worried about waiting for that information, though. Go ahead and ask the questions. Go ahead and start that conversation, because they understand that that's what this whole process is about. Swimmers want to get into school and have that all done just as much as the coaches want it all done. That makes sense? All right. School counselors. And I say this, it's different from school to school, so I just say this in general. I've had a number of school counselors that have no idea what sports are, or how the sports can help them, and where an athlete is, and how that athlete in particular can be helped into school and things like that. I've had athletes that had no problem, or will have no problem getting into very high-level schools with the grades they had and with their swimming ability, and come out of meetings with their school counselors in tears thinking that they weren't going to be able to go to college anywhere, right? It's like, oh no, that's not a school for you, that's too hard. And I look at the times again, because we'd actually already met in that case. You're already the fastest at this school. So don't get too caught up on those things too. Utilize, I think most of them are going to make you utilize them, but utilize the counselors for what they can help. A lot of them are going to be awesome. A lot of them are going to help a ton through this process as well, but don't get too caught up on that, and don't let them tell you something about the athletic part. I will be able to answer that part much, much better than they will in the swimming environment. Does that make sense? 2 signing periods. The first one is in November. The other one is in April for swimming. That's their senior year, and those are the only 2 times they can technically, officially sign. Anytime else they are committing to the school, it's all verbal commitment, but they can't technically sign the letter of intent. And again, only certain people have those letters as well. But that's what those are. Now we're getting, this was the senior year, really managing or lowering that down to the manageable amounts. Recruit trips. I did touch base on it, but it's valuable. But again, remember why you are there. Don't let yourself go crazy. Don't let yourself make a fool out of yourself there as well. Again, as much as they are recruiting you and they want you to have fun, they don't want you to be a fool and out of control while you are there. I don't think our summers have that issue. But again, remember while you're there. Have fun, but be responsible. Same idea, be prepared in the college situations. Sales call. Especially your first recruit trip, understand that the recruit trips is basically a sales call. They're trying to get there and they're trying to convince you that this is the greatest school ever and this is the perfect school for you. And they're going to try, especially depending on where you are as a recruit, they're going to design the weekend around you to make you feel like, wow, man, this is the perfect school. I'm just going to sign and be done. And probably 5 times out of 10, they want to do that, and probably 3 times they actually sign. I don't want you to sign ever after the first trip. If you've already seen other schools, then that's not technically your first trip. But have some background to where it is and have some reference point that you are deciding off of is my recommendation. Again, I don't make these final decisions. You guys make these final decisions, but that's where I come from. Manage missed practices. And I say this both while you're gone. Some of our seniors that are already there have seen it. Not everybody will swim workouts when you go. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't, right? Most of the seniors that go, they'll have set up times that the seniors can work out, and most of them aren't going to. I'll tell you 2 things. One, just for your own swimming, make sure you go in and train there so you stay more consistent. Everything that we talk about is the same. Just because it's a recruit trip and you need to go there doesn't take away the need for training. But the other piece of that is there's never going to be a coach, a college coach that goes, oh wow, look at that kid. He's working really hard on his recruit trip. I don't want him, right? But there very well could be the coach that goes, look at those athletes just sitting over there doing nothing with that one swimmer training right next to them. Who do you think the coach would want out of that? The one swimmer that's willing to do their workout and do it, or the other swimmers that are just going to stand there and talk? I'm willing to bet more often than not they're going to want the swimmer that is training, right? So not only are you helping your immediate season, but you're also giving a good presentation to the coach that is there. This is the spreadsheet that I referenced earlier. Be organized to keep track of your schools, whether it's a spreadsheet or anything like that. You're going to want a list that you can kind of see the picture in front of you of all the different options that are there. Because all the things that were important to you, whether it's weather or whether it's majors or whether it's school size or whether it's how fast the teams are, all of these things can kind of go on that spreadsheet and you can start to see where those pictures fall, right? I think this will help you a lot, and then manage kind of that list of schools as you go through to make sure you kind of track when you call people or email people or things like that as well. The more you can do this, the more on top of that communication you will be with those schools, and the fewer times that you'll ever have something kind of fall through at the last minute. Be prepared to make decisions. I don't know every athlete in here, but every athlete that I have worked with here, or most of those athletes, are not very good at making decisions as teenagers. You're going to have to start to make decisions. You're going to have to start narrowing down. Maybe if you're lucky, you can go from 10 to 1, but chances are you're going to have to start narrowing down and making those decisions of how to eliminate schools, and then having the conversation with people and saying, thank you very much, I really appreciate your school and I wish you guys all the best, but I've kind of narrowed down in a different direction. But be comfortable with that, be respectful of them, but make sure you have those conversations. Don't just ghost them or whatever it's called these days, right? Take responsibility of it. This is swimmers wise. Allow yourself to be excited when you make that decision. Another thing that I see a lot of the swimmers are is swimmers won't understand it, but almost buyer's remorse. Like making a decision and going, all right, I'm all excited, and then going, did I make the right decision? And all nervous about this decision that they've made for 4 years. Spend the time, give the time that you make to this decision, and embrace that decision once you make it. That's it. That's all you can do. There's no way that you can guarantee that this is a perfect decision. And there's no way that this is needing to be forced for 4 years there. If it turns out that you've made a horrible mistake, then change schools. Your coach, your parents, again, will have a conversation with that. But in my mind, change schools. If you didn't make a decision that was perfect for you when you were 17 years old, you're not going to be the first person, you're not going to be the last person. Be willing to change schools and readjust kind of that decision and path for you, whether it's swimming-based or whether it's just school-based or whatever those things are. Some of this, I think, is important to take away that pressure of everything having to be perfect because this is such a big part of the rest of your lives. Yes, it is, but it is because of what you make of it. And where you go to school is going to help you become that no matter where you go to school. There isn't a perfect school that's going to make you the perfect person. It's what you put into it. It's what you get out of it. Right? The examples coming that will go on the website or whatever will be the swim resumes, the emails of coaches, spreadsheets. There's one other thing that came up, I forget. But we'll put all those to make it a little bit easier for the athletes to start so that we don't have to recreate it. I'm going to put it out to you guys. If you know some or if you create something that is really cool and useful and beneficial for you, share with us. And we'll put that up on there as well because as you guys go through this, I'm going to reach back out to some of the or the families that I know did a really good process on that and see if we can get some of their examples as well. The more examples we have and the more things that we have that were useful and beneficial, not just kind of ideas of them, I think are even better. So I'm going to reach out and get some of those as well. But we'll have those within the next month for you to start. But otherwise, I think you really, really start that process now. If you're a freshman or older, is really starting that process now. Okay? I think I covered everything for today. Not bad. A little bit over 45 minutes. Again, thank you. I'll answer some general questions here. I can answer some individual here. But then from there, just email me. We'll set up meetings and we can talk individually about kind of the process and where. And really wherever you are. Like I said, sophomores especially and older, I'm happy to sit down especially. But if you're a freshman and want to chat, I'm happy to sit down. I'm not going to spend a ton of time with you as a freshman because you don't need a ton of time as a freshman. But I'm happy to sit down and get you started if you really need that as well. Make sense? All right. Any questions first? Sean.
So when you go on an unofficial trip, you just go like by yourself without anything, you just show up on campus?
You just show up. Normally I'd say let them know. Even if it was freshman and sophomore, but a junior especially, let the coaches know. Hey, I'm coming in, I just wanted to see the campus, I'm interested in your team, here are my times. If you're around, I'd love to see the pool and see you, otherwise just wanted to let you know, right? On where you are or something like that. But yeah, if you can talk to the coaches, let them know for sure that you'll be there. If they're there and can help, they will. Otherwise, if you're within that range, they're gonna ask to stay in touch and do those things as well, so. Yes?
Actually, I have a few questions, but I'll combine two into one.
Okay.
So you talked a lot about sort of your involvement and just getting that conversation going early on.
Yeah.
And your coaches.
Yeah.
So my kids' coaches, not you.
Right.
Right.
So they should absolutely, yeah, go to their coaches as well.
So can you give examples of when you get started, including you in that conversation, and or how involved is your personal coach versus you?
The personal coach can be involved kind of right from the start. Have those conversations of, here's my letter, what do you think, if you want to use that? Or here are my list of schools, what do you think? Most of the time, the conversations with me start on a couple different things. One is, what's important to you? And what are your schools right now? Right? So some of the things that are like size or things that are important to you. And then the schools, and I have a good idea then of where they start. And we can kind of go the process from there. But it's so individual, it's hard from that. But it's that. It's setting your coach. Normally for most of these groups, it's going to be, hey coach, can I talk to you 5 minutes before practice on Tuesday? And sitting down with them and saying like, here's my list of schools and here's what I've done. What do you think I should do next? Something as simple as that. And they'd go, well, if you haven't emailed the schools yet, then email the schools and do all that. And they can help you kind of with that process in very small conversations. Doesn't mean, you don't need a presentation like this to try to remember everything and to go through it. But it's those conversations. And I'd say as soon as they start to have those conversations. Does that answer it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the second question is,
Okay.
right? And I know at least for my child, he responds to a specific kind of
Mm-hmm.
coaching style. How do you know going through this process what that person's style is?
Well, one of the best ways is to ask the team, right? Because you're going to get feedback from them that will probably be a little bit more honest, but again, they're trying to recruit as well. So they're not going to say, oh no, I hate that coach, he's horrible. But it's going to be playing with that a little bit. And then depending on the school and if the coach's staff knows them, we can see there. But yeah, a personality type I think is a big piece. But I think most of the time the swimmers get a pretty good feel. It's not that anybody's going to tell them, but they're going to get a feel of like, because they'll watch them coach a workout and they'll watch them their things. And most of the time the coaches aren't really going to put on a big show because they want athletes there that want to be there to swim with them. So even if they're more of a yeller, screamer, and gruff guy, probably going to be on the group. Not their worst day probably, but they're probably still going to be on the group because they don't want somebody that's not going to be able to handle that either. So observing is probably the best way. And then having some conversations of like, what's your biggest goal for the team? And if it's always just results-based and things like that. And getting to know them a little bit differently that way rather than just like, how are you going to treat me when I get here? But having different questions that maybe give you a little bit of insight would be my suggestion. Okay. Anything else? I will send this out again. Saw some taking pictures and stuff, so you'll have what was on there. Otherwise, let me know if you have questions and we'll go from there. All right? Thank you.